Um, Barney and I are continuing to look at the Book of Psalms with you. It's a book in the Bible for every possible human emotion. The Psalms have been described as a literary sanctuary, a textual holy place where humans share their joys and struggles with brutal honesty in God's presence. And I really like that definition. So today we're looking at Psalm 100, and I'll just read it for you. It says, "Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving, and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name. For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." Now, as well as categorizing the Psalms according to what emotion they might portray, we can also class them according to their style. And in the whole book of Psalms, there are roughly 7 different types of psalm. There's the hymns of praise, just like most worship songs we sing today, helping to guide us into God's presence. There are also psalms of lament, which I love, and I think Barney will be talking on at some point soon. And they are prayers of deep anguish and pain, where the writer makes no attempt to hide his true feelings. So anger, frustration, hurt, they're all there. Then there's Psalms of Thanksgiving. That's a fairly explanatory one. Psalms of confidence in God. This one's for you, Taryn. These are poems or songs where the writer expresses their complete faith in God, and Psalm 121 is an example of this. I lift my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Bam! Solid, factual statement of faith and confidence in God, and there's plenty of those. Then there's Psalms of remembrance, so remembering God's goodness. The Jews had a real up and down history in their relationship with God. Trust, and then disobedience, then faith, then idolatry. Yet God never gives up on them. And these types of psalms remind God's people of all the things he has done for them, immortalizing them in song so that they never forget. Then there are wisdom psalms. These psalms speak to us about the best ways to live and the consequences of both following and not following God. And finally, kingship psalms. So some of these psalms sing about the kingship of God, but some psalms are actually written about, for, or by the kings of Israel themselves for various royal occasions, such as weddings. Anyway, the psalm we're looking at today is the first kind, a hymn of praise, and we'll look at it in more detail in a moment. But I came to first realize the true importance of psalms when I visited an army base in Arizona when I was in my 20s. I was raising money for a charity I worked for, and some of our supporters were based there. And our meeting that day was held in the chapel, as it was a Christian group. And I noticed in this army chapel there was a bookshelf full entirely of small pocket Bibles, all with a camouflage print on the front and back that matched the soldiers' uniforms. And it was obvious that these Bibles were designed to be taken by the soldiers to wherever they were stationed, to be physically small enough to fit in one of their pockets, and to be used and read by them whenever they needed. One of the ladies in the chapel let us take a Bible each for ourselves as a gift, and as I looked at one closer and held it in my hand, I noticed that the central pages of the book seemed to be raised, and it formed a little ridge in the middle, so that if you were to run your thumb across the side of the Bible from front to back, as if quickly flicking through all the pages, you would physically hit this little bump under your thumb. So I opened the Bible to these pages, and they were the book of Psalms. Someone had obviously decided to design military Bibles like that so that soldiers could find the Psalms easily and, more importantly, quickly. And it made me wonder, why? Why would you need to find the Psalms quickly? But perhaps in combat situations, time would be of the essence. I can't imagine all the different emotions a soldier might feel, but at least there's a book in the Bible where every one of those emotions is represented, where there's a prayer or a song for every occasion, and where God's love, faithfulness, and protection is referred to constantly. A soldier might want to dip into these readings and prayers at a moment of crisis. Perhaps words like these might be the last words they ever read or heard. So there's a real power in the book of Psalms, and its importance of speaking into the human experience mustn't be underestimated. These particular scriptures are designed to bring you and God closer together in an authentic and meaningful way that speaks into your lived experience, whatever that may be. So if you're feeling angry at God, there's a psalm for that. If you're feeling joyful, there's a psalm for that. If you're overwhelmed with grief or terrified or thankful, there are psalms for all these emotions and more. But actually, what if you just feel meh? What if you don't feel anything about God or about life? What if stuff is just getting you down? You know you love God, but you feel distant from Him. How can the Psalms help us then? Well, this is where the Psalms classed as hymns of praise come into play. These Psalms are usually calls to worship, and their purpose is to reorientate us from what we were feeling back to a place of worship and praise. And this is exactly what Psalm 100 does. In Psalm 100, we're reminded of why we should praise God and worship Him with our whole being, with everything we have. Maybe we've forgotten all He has done for us. So the psalmist tries to remind us. If we look at Psalm 100, we can see multiple calls to worship and also reasons for that worship. Now, I counted 7 calls to praise in Psalm 100. Verse 1, shout for joy. Verse 2, worship the Lord. Verse 2, come before Him. Verse 3, know that the Lord. Verse 4, enter His gates. Verse 5, give thanks. And also verse 4, and praise His name. 7 different commands telling us to get ready and helping us to prepare to worship God. And then the psalmist also lists the reasons for this worship. Verse 3, He made us. We are not an accident. Every part of us was planned and loved into existence. Then again in verse 3, we are His. God, the Holy One, the Creator of the world, calls us His. Still in verse 3, we are the sheep of His pasture, meaning He is our shepherd. We don't need to go through life without direction. God is always there to guide, care for us, and walk with us. And then in verse 5, He is good. We can trust God. He is the one thing in this world untainted by evil. He is entirely good, and He gives good things to His children. Verse 5 goes on, His love endures forever. We will never not be loved by Him. He will never run out of love, and there's nothing we can do or say that will stop His love. His love endures forever. And finally, in verse 5, his faithfulness continues forever. He won't let us go. He won't give up. And he will always be there, no matter what we do. Some psalms can be used as personal prayers. They come across as an intimate, private, personal moment between the writer and God, to which we might relate to at different points in our life, and we might choose to use in times of personal devotion. But other psalms, such as this psalm, Psalm 100, were used in public gatherings. They brought the people of God together. This psalm may even have been used as a call to worship, a hymn of praise that the Jewish people used as they approached the temple. And this is why it's good to gather with other Christians, so we can lift each other up and spur each other on, reminding and telling each other the great things God has done and how great he is. When we truly realize who God is, we can't help but share him with others, the amazing things he has done in our lives. These things need to be shared with others. They need to experience what it's like to be loved faithfully and eternally and unconditionally. Surely they need to experience that, because it really is life-changing. So let me leave you guys with a question and a challenge. Question: who in your life helps bring you closer to God? Who are the positive influences in your life who help to gain the right perspective on things? Do you have someone like that? If not, churches are brilliant places to find friends like that, this church included. And secondly, a challenge. Verse 5, the last verse of Psalm 100, is really easy to memorize. And it's one that you can always come back to when you need to reorientate yourself. Whenever you're feeling meh, or just when you want to give God praise at any given moment. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, his love endures forever, and his faithfulness continues for all generations. Anyway, thanks guys for listening. As usual, me and Barney are around afterwards to chat.